Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and take notes while you're watching this video. All right. Now, this is what we're about to get into. We're about to factor out a GCF from this algebraic expression. What is a GCF? GCF is an acronym that stands for greatest common factor. Some textbooks might call it a HCF, the highest common factor. All right. Now, what's the purpose of doing this? The purpose of doing this is because eventually you're going to have to solve equations that include algebraic expressions like this. And factoring the expression is one way to break the expression down and make it simpler. So that way you can then solve what you end up with, which will probably be a linear expression or a couple of linear expressions. All right. So that's one of the reasons that we should learn how to factor out a GCF. Now, there are many ways of factoring. Factoring out a GCF is just the first method that you should always attempt, no matter what the expression look like, whether it's a trinomial, 1, 2, 3, three terms means it's a trinomial, whether it's a binomial, if it only had two terms, like 1, 2, if these two was only all we had, right? 1, 2, or, if it could be a 4-term polynomial, you always try to find a GCF. All right, now, how do you find a GCF? Now, we want to first look at what your coefficients are. Now, what's the coefficient? The coefficient, of course, is the big number, right? That's adjacent to the variable. It tells you how many of those variable terms you have. So the coefficient in this term is 24. The coefficient in this term is -6. The coefficient in this term is +12, right? Now, look at those coefficients and think back to elementary school or middle school when you had to find the greatest common factor of integers or the greatest common factor of whole numbers. What was your process? All right. Hopefully you have your multiplication facts memorized, because if you got your multiplication facts memorized, then you're going to have your division facts memorized. And if you got your division facts memorized, then it should be an easier process to find a GCF of these three numbers out of 12, -6, and 24. So out of 12, -6, and 24, the greatest common factor is 6. So what I like to do when I do these problems is I just write the GCF off to the side somewhere. So I just write GCF, and then out of 12, -6, and 24. Now you might be wondering, why it's not -6? Because -6 is a negative number, right? How come it's not a -6 for the GCF? It doesn't really matter whether your GCF is positive or negative, right? So in this case, we can use 6 as our greatest common factor. All right. This is not the same marker I was using. I do not like this. This drawing look gray. I'm not feeling this, but you know what? I'm gonna leave it. All right, I'm gonna leave it. Make sure this is the marker. Yeah, this is the marker I want. This is the marker I started out with, right? All right, so part of my GCF is gonna be 6. Now, why? Why is it 6? Again, the greatest common factor of 12, -6, and 24. The biggest number, right? The biggest number that can multiply into all three of these is 6, because 6 times 2 equals 12. 6 times -1 equals -6. 6 times 4 is equal to 24. That's why 6 is the biggest number that can multiply into each of these three, which is why 6 is part of the GCF. Now, notice I said part, because we still got to deal with the variables. Now, how do we find the GCF of variables? Now, first of all, you got to make sure that that same variable is present in each of the terms. So each of these terms got an x. This got an x to the third. This got an x to the second. This got an x to the what power? When there's no exponent written, it's x to the first power. You got to understand that. This is not x to the 0 power. This is x to the first power. When it ain't no exponent written, it's understood. What's understood don't need to be said. What's understood don't need to be written sometimes. It's x to the first power. So you say, okay, x is common to all three terms. You take the x with the smallest exponent. That's a 3, that's a 2, that's an invisible 1. So you know that 1 is less than 2 and 3. So therefore, you're going to keep this. This is part of the GCF. Boom. So that's your GCF, 6x. Now, we're not done, though. We're going to factor this. We factored out the GCF in order to factor the trinomial expression. All right, so this is how we do this. Now we're going to rewrite this expression with the GCF outside of a set of parentheses. So this is going to be equal to 6x times another trinomial. The GCF times another trinomial, 1, 2, 3. Now, the question you should be asking is, what's going to go inside the parentheses? What's going to go inside the parentheses? What's going to go in there is the quotient when you divide each of these three terms by the GCF. So you got to know how to divide. You got to know exponent properties. I got a whole playlist on exponent properties. Make sure you go in, you delve into that. Make sure you understand the exponent properties, especially for this next step, the exponent property of division, the division property. So, all right, so check this out. We're going to do the first term divided by the GCF, 12x to the third divided by 6x. Now, divide the coefficients first. What's 12 divided by 6? That's 2. What's x cubed divided by x? You got to know the exponent properties of division. You subtract the exponents. 3 minus the invisible 1. 3 minus the invisible 1. What's 3 minus 1? That's 2. So that's going to become x to the second power because 3 minus invisible 1 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. So that's going to be x to the second power. So you take this 2x squared. What you going to do with it? You're going to put it inside the parentheses in the first spot. So this 2x squared replaces 12x to the third. This 2x squared replaces 12x to the third because 12x to the third divided by 6x equals this. Now we do the same thing, right? We do the same thing. We divided the first term by the GCF. Now we're going to divide the second term by the GCF. Then we're going to divide the third term by the GCF. So now we do negative 6x squared divided by 6x. Negative 6 divided by 6 is negative 1. X squared divided by x is x to the first power. Why? Because division property of exponents. Check my playlist out. 2 minus invisible 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. That's where that x to the first came from. Where'd the negative 1 come from? Negative 6 divided by positive 6. So we need to clean this up because this looked messy. This 1 is not necessary. This 1 is not necessary. Again, when 1 is your coefficient, it's not necessary. The negative sign is necessary, but the 1 ain't necessary. This exponent 1, not necessary. So we can rewrite this in a more simplified form as negative x. Just negative x, because the 1 ain't necessary as a coefficient, and the 1 ain't necessary as an exponent. So then we're going to write minus x in here. Now, last step, 24x. Yeah, because I got to run to a tutoring session. Let me hurry up and finish this vid. So 24x divided by the GCF again. 24x divided by 6x. What's 24 divided by 6? We got to know our multiplication facts. So therefore, we can know our division facts. 24 divided by 6 is 4. X divided by x is 1. It's not x. X divided by x. Whenever you divide something by itself, the quotient is always 1. If you wanted to apply the division rule for exponents, we would say invisible 1 minus invisible 1 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. Another exponent property, the zero property. What happens when a term has a 0 exponent? That term turns into or is converted into a positive 1. So this leaves us with, this also is another way to find that x divided by x is just plain 1. So we got 4 times 1, which is just 4, which is what we already had. We take that positive 4, throw that up in the parentheses, and that is the final answer. 6x times, this is how you read it. Now make sure you know how to read it out loud. Don't say parentheses. We don't do that. 6x times the quantity. No sign in between. That means multiplication. 6x times the quantity of 2x squared minus x plus 4. 6x times the quantity of 2x squared minus x plus 4. That's all it is to it. So just rewind the video if you have any questions, right? Rewind the video, run it back, right? Take notes. Make sure you understand the process. Find the GCF of the coefficients first. 12, negative 6, 24, coefficients. Those are called coefficients. And then find the GCF of the common variables. The x's are all common, so you take the GCF of those. With the variables, it's easy. All you do is just find the variable with the smallest exponent out of all of them. So out of 3, 2, and invisible 1, 1 is the smallest. So that's what we're rocking with. We're rocking with the 1. All right. And then you got to take each of the terms and divide by the GCF. So you end up with this. 6x times the quantity, 2x squared minus x plus 4. All right. Before I go, though, shout out to Harriet Tubman. Shout out to Rosa Parks. Angela Davis, and shout out to the recent ancestor, Asada Shakur. All right, I'll see y'all on the next video. Peace.